Good morning, dear students. Welcome to our contact session. I hope 2019 is going so far so good for you. I wish you all the best. We are going to start with our research project phase 1, which is basically your research proposal. I will take you through what you need to go and what you need to know. But before we start, there are some important questions that I would like you to think about. Ask yourself, what is it that I want to study? Like in terms of research, what is it that you would like to find out? Why is a topic important? Whenever you're identifying your topic, you need to ask yourself, why is it important? How is it significant within the subject areas covered it in my course? And what are the problems will it help solve? How does it build upon and hopefully go beyond research already conducted in the topic? What exactly should I plan to do? And can I get it done in the time available? Remember, you are given a period of few months to write down your research proposal. Basically, your research proposal should consist of maximum 15 pages. As indicated in your tutorial letter, you'll find all that information, the whole guidelines, what is expected from you, how many pages, the font size, and the font type. You need to love reading. Get hold of different research books. First of all, before you start writing, you need to read up about that topic, about that title that you identified, about that information, whatever it is that you would like to find out. Now, talking of research proposal, it's presented in 3 sections. We have section 1, which is talking about introduction. We have section 2, which is basically your literature review. And then section 3, which is the methodology. And very important, there's a section for references. Remember, in academic writing, we have to acknowledge the source of information. So you need to compile your references. Looking at section 1, introduction, there are also subsections in that section. We have what we call background of the study, statement of the problem, questions or objectives of the study, depending if you are doing qualitative research or quantitative research, rationale, or what we call significance. So wherever you see questions or objective, you either opt for one. You cannot do both. It's the same with rationale or the significance of the study. Limitation of the study, we have the limitations of the study, and then the definitions of terms. I will look at all these subsections one by one. Let's start with background of the study. You need to provide the necessary background or context for your research problem. Remember, before you identify a problem, you need to give a background. What are the other researchers saying about that problem? What has been written before? What is out there? Provide a brief but appropriate historical, backdrop. Provide the contemporary context in which your proposed research questions occupies the central stage. You should also then identify key players. Remember what we call the expert or the gurus in that field. And you should refer to the most relevant and representative publications, not just anything that is written out there. You need to reference, you need to use peer-reviewed journals, for instance. Anyone can write anything and put it on the internet, but be very careful. You have to use those ones that are peer-reviewed. There are also different publications and journals. In short, you should try to paint your research question in broad brushes. At the same time, bring out its significance, the importance of your research questions. Sort of you highlight it in your background. And then we move down to the statement of the problem. What is the statement of the problem? It's a question that most of our students are asking. When it comes to, before you even state the problem, you ask yourself, what is the problem? Why am I doing this research? What is it that I would like to address? You need to give a brief background about the problem. You need to state the research problem. What is the problem? Ask yourself that question. You need to state it. Like, for instance, teachers are not using ICT can be a very good problem. Now give more detailed explanation about the purpose of a study than what you stated in the introduction. This is particularly important if a problem is complex or multifaceted, If it's so complex, people would like to understand. This has been done. Research has been conducted in this area. However, teachers are still not, for example, using ICT. So we would like to understand what is the problem, you state it, and then you describe the major issues or problems that to be addressed by your research. What can your study do about the research problem? Very important. You do not just state the problem and you leave it hanging. You have to tell the readers out there, what is your research going to do about the problem? What is it that you are planning to do regarding that problem at hand? That is now the research problem. Be sure to note how your proposed study builds on previous assumptions about the research problem. Very important. I always advise our students that present your statement of the problem in 3 subsections. You don't have to indicate them as sections as per se, but when you are presenting, you start with a paragraph where you are giving a background. Like for instance, according to these researchers, they conducted a research on this and they find out these are their findings, these are they recommended, for example, and then you state now the problem. Like I gave you an example of teachers are not using ICT or utilizing ICT. It can be a good problem. Now, based on the background, your study, what is your study going to do? Then you indicate what your study will do regarding the problem. Okay. Questions or objectives of a study, as I indicated earlier, you need to choose either one. You should opt for one. If you are going for questions, you stick to questions. If you are going for objectives, you stick to objectives of the study. Do not mention the two of them together. Now, when you are stating your research questions, you need to make an attempt to answer, You must make sure that you are making an attempt to answer those questions, or your study is making an attempt to answer such questions. You can identify perhaps main research questions. You can also have sub-questions, those who are related, and they can give you information to build on your main research questions. Same applies to the research objectives. You have to state what is the objective. The difference between objectives and questions is that with regard to research questions, it's a question that you can ask. How do teachers use ICT in their lesson? It can be a very good question. There is a question mark. But with regard to objectives, you have to state what are the objectives of your research. Place your research question in the context of either a current hot area or an older area that remains viable. Indicate the main research questions as well as sub-questions where applicable as well. Remember, you're not reinventing the wheel. You have to start somewhere. Moving on to rationale or significance of the study. You should present the rationale of your proposed study clearly, thereby indicating why is it worth doing. You should answer to so what questions. For example, why should anyone, people will ask you such questions like, people want to know why is it important, why the study should be done, why should you conduct that study. You ask yourself those questions. They should be at the back of your mind always as a researcher. The specific purpose of the study. What is the purpose of the study? Why doing that study? And you should also be able to describe how the anticipated results will impact future scholarly research, theory, practice, or some forms of interventions that you want to propose or recommend. Also, the policy making, your study is recommending to the policy maker to do what. So those are the things that you need to understand when you are writing about the significance of your study. Why is it important? Why that study and not the other ones that were conducted before? What is different from your study regarding the other studies? You have to bring it out. Okay? And then with limitation of a study, You have to explain how you plan to go about conducting your research. Your study, for example, with regard to qualitative research, you will notice that in most cases it's limited to a certain number of participants. Maybe, for instance, your study, this study is limited to 2 teachers from a certain secondary school. So those are the limitations. I always advise students, do not focus on financial issues. You don't have money to go conduct your research. Then why are you studying? Those are things that you can resolve on at another level. You don't have to write them in your research proposal. You have to clearly indicate the key sources you intend to use and explain how they will contribute to your analysis of the topic and what are the possible limitations of your study. The limitations could be the number of participants, maybe the information that they are providing. You might understand that it's not so sufficient, you cannot validate that, but you don't focus on the finances, the distance, and the lack of technology. You don't have access to computer. It's not a limitation when it comes to research study. You have to make sure that before you carry out your research, you are able to conduct that research. So those are operational issues that you sort out on your own, and you don't have to present them in your research proposal, because remember, your research proposal is only 15 pages maximum. Normally it's 12 pages, you know. You don't have to write so much that it's not necessary. With regard to delimitation of the study, you need to set the boundaries of your proposed research in order to provide a clear focus. What are the boundaries? Where appropriate, state not only what you will study, but what is excluded from the study. Like, for example, you indicate that maybe at a primary school, you will only, or pre-primary or primary school, you are only going to focus on the grade 5 or the grade 7s or 5 to 7. You have to set the boundaries, or this study will exclude the grade 7s, but you will only focus on the grade 6. But you remember they're in the same grade range, the level now. And then, very important, definition of terms. You know, those key terms. We need to understand, what does it mean to your study? I always advise students, define a term and try to reference, because it's not your own knowledge. You know, we don't create our own knowledge per se, but then we have to acknowledge the sources. Like, for example, you want people to understand what is ICT, what does it mean to your study? The use of ICT, you need to explain such terms. If necessary, provide definitions of key concepts or terms, indicate how certain terms should be understood. Depending on the number of terms, this can be also presented. I always advise students to present them in a table format, just so you keep your work neat. Instead of having written definitions all over the page, you can present them in a table format. Very important, you define the term and you also give a reference of other studies, other people who have used the same or similar terms. It's not always about coming up with your own definition, but you can put it in your own words. You paraphrase, but also you should acknowledge the source of information. Now we move on to section 2 of the research proposal, which is the literature review. A lot of students, they struggle with literature review. It's a challenge to most students. In all the years, we have noticed that students are not following the instructions when it comes to literature review. Literature reviewed must be relevant to your topic. Not just anything written, you are putting it down in your research proposal. You should make sure that it's relevant to your topic, and it must be logically and clearly presented. You should write in terms of coherence. You should not just jump from one topic to the other. You have to address one issue at a time, finish it, move on with the second one. At least use 8 separate cited materials. You should review and synthesis of prior studies related to the research problem under investigation, and you should also indicate theoretical or conceptual framework. This is very important when it comes to theoretical or conceptual framework. These are the, the framework that underpin your study. This is the conceptual framework. Are you going to develop some concept derived from your study, or there's a theory where you base your study? Like for instance, you learn that there are certain theories that were written by theorists, the philosophers. People came up with theories. You can adapt one and then you write about it and how you will apply it in your study. That's basically what you write about there. The application of that theory to your study. You don't have to copy exactly what they are saying about that theory. If you're adapting some concept, also define them, but we would like to read, what does it mean to your study? How should we understand it in your study? That is basically all about your literature review. You have to read what has been written previously by other researchers. What are they saying? As we continue with literature review, what do the authors agree on? Who applies similar approaches to analyzing the research problem? What are the major areas of disagreement, controversy, or debate? That's what you need to bring out as you are reviewing the literature. Pay attention to the verbs you use to describe what an author says or does. For example, Simon 2014 asserts that, or demonstrates, or demonstrated, argues. Very important. You need to understand those verbs. It's not just about according to Simon 2014. You know what we do, how we write in research. At times, also you need to use a right verb for what it is that you are presenting. You cannot just place it there for it being a verb. How does your own work draw upon, depart from, synthesize, or add a new perspective to what has been said in the literature? So you need to bring out your voice. You want to hear your own work. What is it that you are going to do differently? Very important. And then we start with methodology, which is section 3, research design. These are the sub sections in this section. Population, where applicable. We also look at sample and sampling procedure, the instruments, data collection procedure, and data analysis, as well as ethical considerations. Starting with, when it comes to methodology, you need to make a decision as to why the research design and methods used were chosen over other options. If you are going for qualitative research, you have to indicate why qualitative research and what type of qualitative research you are opting for. The same with quantitative methods. As long as you explain which method, like for example, qualitative research, and you want to focus on a case study. What type of a case study is it? Is it a multiple case study? Is it a single case study? You have to read the research books and explain those methods. You should also demonstrate your knowledge of alternative methods. Perhaps mixed methods. You want to look at some component of qualitative. You also maybe would like to interview respondents, and you also have components of questionnaire, for instance. Then you are dealing with mixed method research. You have to indicate that if that is the case. But you cannot present both. You have to choose one. You always opt for one. Which method are you opting for, which is relevant to your study? And it will help you to answer. Remember, everything we are doing in research, we would like to answer our research questions. Now, make the case that your approach is the most appropriate and most valid way to address your research questions. Very important. Decide on the method and approach for qualitative and quantitative research. Qualitative analysis, also part of the methodology. Your method section needs to be more elaborated. How are you going to analyze your study? For example, if you are doing qualitative data research, also looking at data collection process in qualitative research has far greater impact on their results as compared to quantitative research, because then the method, we are looking at the instruments. How are you going to collect your data? Are you going to interview your respondents? Remember, once you interview your respondents, you have to transcribe, the interview transcriptions, You have to interpret, to analyze, and make sense of what your respondents are saying. When it comes to research method, in terms of quantitative, the method section typically consists of the following sections. We have design, which is, you have to indicate, is it a questionnaire study or a laboratory experiment? What kind of design do you choose? Subject or participants, who will take part in your study? What kind of sampling procedures do you use? You look at the instruments, for instance, what kind of measuring instruments or questionnaires do you use? Why do you choose them? Are they valid and reliable? Very important in quantitative methods. You know, the reliability and validity of your instruments. It's very crucial when it comes to quantitative research as well as qualitative. Procedure, how do you plan to carry out your study? What activities are involved? How long does it take? You know, the time frame, you need to develop that. This is very important as to keep you on par with your work and you can complete your research proposal on time, because then you tell yourself, within this period I should be able to do my literature review, and then in this period of time, maybe within 2 months, I should be able to start the write-up, the initial write-up of your research proposal. It takes quite some time. And the last but not least, we have references. You are required to use APA referencing style. This is one of the challenge we have with our students. APA referencing style. For in-text citations, there's a difference. There are various books that are prescribed, and all the information are also presented in your tutorial letter for you to find out how should you reference. There's a difference to reference. In text, it means when you are writing now your initial proposal, especially when it comes to literature review, when you review your literature, you have to indicate who said that what. Even though you are paraphrasing, you have to reference. Remember, we should acknowledge the sources. And there is a way to reference when it comes to in-text citation. You should also then list only the literature that you actually used or cited in your proposal. Do not copy other people's references. You might find yourself including a reference information which you did not use at all in your proposal. It's very important to cite only the sources that you used. I would like to go back to the whole presentation, how you present your research proposal. For instance, for phase 1, remember we are talking about those sections. If the instruction said keep it maximum 15 pages, it's very important to keep it maximum 15 pages. Now we are going to look at the common mistakes in proposal writing. And I'm sure you can agree with me that some of these mistakes, they can pop up as you are writing your proposal. Some students, failure to provide the proper context to frame the research question. Anything can go wrong there. Also, failure to delimit the boundary conditions for your research. Like, for example, if we say 15 pages, keep it 15 pages. If we say use font type times New Roman, which is font size is 12 and is double space, or maybe 1.5. So you have to do it like that. And failure to cite landmark studies. Like I say, in-text citations, when you talk about references, it's very important to cite the work that you are presenting. Do not just presume or assume. Sometimes we can also, what they talk about, plagiarism. At times you are writing information that were stated by Simon and you reference it as Nifikwa 2015, but it was actually stated by Simon 2014. Very important that you need to ensure that You cite landmark studies that are also related to what you are researching about. Failure to accurately present the theoretical and empirical contributions by other researchers. Do not assume in research. You have to make sure. Failure to stay focused on the research question. Remember, your research questions are guiding you throughout your proposal, because the attempt is to do what? To answer your research questions. That is the reason why we are carrying out our research study. Failure to develop a coherent and persuasive argument for proposed research. Your work should flow. You should be able to persuade people. Why your study? The question of, so what? Why your study? Why should people be interested in what you are writing? Too much, when you provide too much detail on minor issues, sometimes people focus on minor issues, especially your favorite. Our students tend to write about absenteeism, and I think this year we are not going to accept absenteeism at all. I believe students are no longer missing schools. There are programs that were put in place. Let us look at other problems, okay? Let us identify other issues in education, but not enough detail on major issues as well. If you are just focusing on minor issues, too much rambling, going all over the map. You are moving from this side to that side without a clear sense of direction. The best proposals move forward with ease and grace, like a seamless river. It's flowing. Just from introduction to the literature review, everything is connected throughout to the methodology, section is flowing. Too many citation, lapses, and incorrect references. I gave you an example of accusing authors. A person did not even write anything about it. It's just because you have seen it somewhere and you cannot recall. Always make sure that you take note of the reference material. Too long or too short. If we say 12 pages, keep it to 12 pages. Do not submit a 7-page research proposal when you are asked to submit a 12-page research or 15-page research proposal. Failing to follow the APA style, very important. APA referencing style, you can look for it also on the internet. There are also books, APA referencing style. It will give you a very good guide. You need to understand when you are referencing a journal article in a reference list, how do you present it? When you are referencing a textbook, for example, how do you present it in the reference list? Do you underline? Remember, most of the time we expect you to type. So what is it that we italize? Is it now the title? You need to know the difference between the reference material for your in-text and also for your reference list. Sloping writing. You are just writing this and you move over to this one and you go back to what you wrote first. Address one issue at a time and then you start with a new one. Always from your introduction throughout your literature review as well as the methodology. Those are some of the common mistakes. The mistakes are out there. These are just some of the common mistakes. You can also read up more information on this. It will give you a guideline so that you know you are not going overboard. Some references. You need to visit some of these links. Write your proposal, writing guide on research proposal, some links on maybe research report. It will give you the best guidelines. There is no need to write when you are presenting your research proposal. There is no need for a title. For the table of contents when it comes to proposal. It's fine for now. But if you are doing a table of contents, I always tell students, please generate it with the computer. You use your Microsoft Word to generate the table of contents, because you have to enter the headings already in Microsoft Word. It's easy to retrieve it. And very important, title page is one thing that students are missing out also. Title page should contain what? Your name, your student number, your course subject, Very important, especially your name and student number, and then your topic on your title page. You don't have to write it in the, when you start now, introduction, then your title. It must just be on your title page. And then table of content, you should generate it with a computer using Microsoft Word. Those are some of the very important section that you need to know. And preparation is key. It's very important that you prepare yourself. To give you some tips for writing your research proposal, we strongly advise you to focus on your research proposal to ensure that your writing is coherent, is clear and convincing. As a person, when a person is reading your proposal, they should be convinced. The readers out there should be convinced that what you are proposing is doable. How are you going to do it? Convince us. Why that study? Why focusing on that problem? The following tips may assist you to organize your proposal in order to complete the research project in a timely fashion. Getting started. Where do we start? Student will ask you, or you ask yourself, where do I start? I do not know where to start. How do I come up with a topic? I always advise students, do not focus all your energy wasting 3 months just thinking about the topic. The topic can be done at a later stage. Try by all means to first start writing or reading up about the topic, about what it is that you would like to do. Once you start reading up, then you can start with your literature review or your introduction, and then you can now develop a topic. Once you have something written up, I always send ask students, send me a write-up. What do I mean by a write-up? I want you to write something. What is it that you want? What are the ideas that you want to look at? What is it that you would like your research to address? So identify your upcoming task, your deadlines or the barriers. Planning time is essential when there are many demands on your time. You have to make time for your research. Students are calling me, I'm teaching, I don't have time, I'm staying in the village, the computer is only in town. You have to make time. What are you doing during school holidays? You have to make time for your research proposal or for your research study. Then begin building out your schedule. It's very important to identify or to build out a schedule and get yourself organized to avoid stress. Because there is no point calling your tutor and you don't even have a concept note. You have to note down what it is that you would like to do. Do not stress about the topic. If you cannot find it, wait until you do your literature review, and then you can develop your topic from what it is that you have researched about. And then you should learn to follow instructions. Read and conform to all instructions found on your study guide and the tutorial letter. If you are not sure, call your tutor. Make sure when they are telling you about your proposal, it should contain 15 pages. You have to understand, what do they mean by 15 pages? Or the font, how big is the font? If you are having more than 15 pages, is it acceptable? Then you can get advice on what to do next. Make sure that your research proposal fits the criteria set out in the study guide. The criteria are clear. What happens when we select a topic? We say choosing a topic can sometimes be the hardest part of writing a research proposal. You can agree with me. Find something from your area of expertise that you are passionately interested in. It is important that the title of your project is understandable, reflects the goals of the study and attracts interest. Like I say, most of the students' favorite topic is learners' absenteeism. This year, we are encouraging you to look at other areas. Like I say, I want to read studies that are writing about the use of ICT in education. Let's look at that area. It's not over-exaggerated. remember the main purpose. We want to see how our teachers are utilizing, are making use of the technology in their classroom, are integrating the technology, looking into areas of the use of internet, social media. Remember, these are the young generations. They are already on social media. Look at some of those areas, you know. And then research and note-taking. It's also some of the tips that you need to develop, to understand. You need to develop the skills of note-taking. Demonstrate that you are competent to conduct the research and have chosen the research environment in which to achieve your goals. You should conduct what we call preliminary research to ensure you have plenty to write about. And how do you develop your research project? Break down your proposal into point form before writing your first draft. Use headings and subheadings as outlined in the assignment on your tutorial letter as presented to you today. And you should also then learn to write a draft. Do not just write your first draft and you are sending it right away. Go through it, review it, ask someone to read through for you. Your first draft is never the draft that you should send through to me. Draft something and ask your colleague, a friend, to go through it for you, to give you a second opinion. Begin following your outline by noting ideas that need to be cited. If any section becomes too challenging to be productive, move on to another and come back to it later. If, for example, you do not understand how you will introduce your topic, when you are writing that section of introduction, basically you are required to introduce your topic. If it's challenging for you, move over to literature review. Start reading about the topic. Review the literature. What are the other authors saying about your research, the topic of your interest? What are the other researchers writing regarding that topic? You have to read through. You have to read and understand and review the literature. Taking note of the key, the important information they are talking about. What are the findings? What are they recommending? Those are the things to note down. When you are reviewing, you read the person's abstract. That is the summary of their research. What were their findings? How did they discuss their findings? What are they recommending? How did they conclude? What are the conclusions that they are drawing, that they've drawn from their study? And then also, review and revise. Very important. You should always learn to review your own proposal and revise it. After writing, take a break to rest your eyes and mind. Print out your proposal and go through it with a colored pen. If you type it and you print it out, you take a green pen or a red pen and you go through it. Sometimes it helps to read it aloud too. Read it to yourself. Lock yourself in your study and read it aloud. Read it loud to yourself. And also, you should also have a friend or a tutor peer review for a fresh opinion. Oh, colleague, what do you think? Get feedback and edit. Then edit some more and get more feedback before you send it through to your tutor. Very important. Review and revise. Okay? Citations and references. Use APA referencing style as indicated for in-text citations. Remember what you are writing. Inside your text, in-text citation, you have to reference as per the APA referencing style. Also for your reference list, you cannot now have the person's surname and initials inside your, maybe under the literature review section. You have to only write what? The person's surname, the last name, which is the surname, and the year of publication, the year they published their study, or the year they published their article in a journal, the journal article. Proofread and submit. Before you submit, you should do what? You should proofread. Read through your work over and over again to ensure you haven't made any oversights such as copy, paste errors. Make sure that all your points are very clear. I believe this is very clear. And I always tell students, writing a research proposal can be challenging, but it's one of the most interesting and exciting moment, because you have so many ideas, but you want to find yourself. You want to place yourself somewhere. That is very important. And by the way, my name is Etuna Nifikwa, and I can be contacted on my email address at etunangifikwa@gmail.com. My mobile number is 085 28 66 812, and the best time to contact me is between 8:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon. Should you have any question, please feel free to drop me an email. I always tell students I reply very fast to email. Then sometimes you leave your phone somewhere, but email address, we are always on our email, and these days everything is done online. And how do we submit our research proposal? Send it through to my email address. Send your draft there. I need to review it for you as well. I need to guide you. I need to advise you. Please make use of the email address etunangifikwa@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your time. All the best with your research proposal, and all the best with 2019. Thank you.